investigations, were you activated regarding a missing child in Two Rivers, Wisconsin?
Yes, we were.
Did you respond to that area?
I did.
And specifically, what apartment was that child missing from?
The address was 3918 Michigan Road, apartment 102, Two Rivers, Wisconsin, in Manitowoc County.
And the child that was missing, approximately how old was that child?
3 years old.
You responded as part of DCI, but did other law enforcement agencies respond as well?
Yes.
And some of those agencies included the Two Rivers Police Department, Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, and other local agencies, correct?
That's correct.
As part of this investigation, was there an investigative team eventually formed with yourself and other officers?
Yes.
And are you considered one of the lead officers in this case?
Yes, I am.
As a result of that, have you reviewed reports from the Two Rivers Police Department, Sheriff's Office, as well as DCI?
I have.
Not all the reports, but a fair number of them, correct?
That's correct.
As well as some of the evidence involved in this case, correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, were some of those, strike that. Did you also review a criminal complaint?
Yes.
And in fact, the criminal complaint that involves a Jesse Vang.
Yes.
And the person you know as Jesse Vang, is he present in court today?
Yes, he is.
Could you describe where he's seated and what he's wearing?
He's seated at the defendant's table wearing an orange jumpsuit.
Let the record reflect identification of the defendant.
Any objection, Attorney Johnson?
No, Your Honor.
All right, the record will reflect the identification of Mr. Vang for the purposes of this preliminary hearing.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 1. Can you take a look at that, please?
Sure.
Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And what is Exhibit 1?
This is the criminal complaint that I reviewed in preparation of this hearing.
And that's the criminal complaint that was filed in this case?
That's correct.
And you've authored some of the reports that are the basis of this complaint and reviewed other reports, correct?
Yes.
And have you found the information contained in the criminal complaint accurate?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move Exhibit 1 into evidence.
I object.
Objection?
Yes, I do object. The criminal complaint is not evidence. There's even a jury instruction that tells the jury that it's not evidence because it's just a series of allegations. So I object.
Attorney Wbay?
Your Honor, this is a preliminary hearing. Hearsay is allowed at a preliminary hearing. There's going to be several follow-up questions as far as information. Some of that, based upon the technical nature of it, is going to need to be referred to from the complaint to make sure the record is accurate.
I didn't object on the grounds that he's using it to refresh his recollection. That would probably be appropriate. And hearsay is admissible at a preliminary hearing. But there are so many levels of hearsay involved in a criminal complaint. First of all, the officer who may have interviewed somebody at the scene, then he filed a report. Then this witness on the stand reviewed the report, transferred that information to a district attorney, who then put it into a criminal complaint. There's no way the court can evaluate the reliability of that evidence, so I object. It's not evidence.
This is a preliminary hearing. For the purposes of that, the court will allow will receive the criminal complaint. Go ahead, Attorney LaBrie.
Thank you. When you arrived in Two Rivers on February 20th of 2020, was law enforcement speaking with Mr. Vang at his apartment as well as at the Two Rivers Police Department?
Yes, they were.
Did they also speak with a Katrina Bauer?
Yes.
And as part of your work throughout this case, did you review some of those interviews?
I did.
I'm going to start with Katrina Bauer. What was her relationship to victim child one?
She was the mother.
Now, my objection is that the question does not specify whether that's calling for his personal knowledge or hearsay. So I object to the form of the question.
Can you rephrase the question?
Was Katrina Bauer asked if her relationship to victim child one?
Yes.
And did she respond as what her relationship was?
Yes, she did.
What was her relationship?
She was the mother to the missing child.
Did she provide information about why the child was in Two Rivers?
I have the same objection. The form of the question does not lay a foundation as to whether this witness is interviewing Ms. Bauer or if she's being interviewed by somebody else who then filed a report reviewed by this witness. I mean, I believe there needs to at least be that foundation.
Attorney LaBrie.
I can rephrase. Did you review reports regarding her interview or watch recordings of her interview?
Yes.
Okay. Was it reviewed reports or watch the recording? Or both?
I reviewed reports.
Okay. And that was part of your duties as being one of the lead investigators on this?
Correct.
Okay. And do you recall who the specific officers were who spoke with Katrina Bauer?
Initially, it was Lieutenant Jacob Glazer from the Two Rivers Police Department and Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office Detective Mike Herman.
Did she indicate to those interviewers why victim child one was in Two Rivers?
Yes.
And what did she say?
She was in a relationship with Jesse Vang, and she resided in Wisconsin Dells. She had trouble controlling victim child one's behavior issues. Therefore, victim child one was sent to Vang's apartment in Two Rivers to deal with the punishment related to his bad behaviors.
Was there a time frame as far as when victim child one was in Two Rivers?
Victim child one had been going to Two Rivers for about a week at a time since January of 2024. He'd spend about a week at Vang's apartment and then return back to Wisconsin Dells with his mother. At this recent stay, victim child one had been at Vang's apartment since February 12th, 2024.
Did law enforcement conduct follow-up to determine whether victim child one had been exchanged or with Jesse Vang during that February 12th time period?
Yes, we did.
And did you review some video or other evidence that was able to confirm whether victim child one was transferred to Mr. Vang?
Yes.
And what kind of evidence did you review?
We watched some video from a Quick Trip in Fond du Lac where Katrina Bauer had turned over child victim one to Jesse Vang on February 12th, 2024.
Was, on February 20th of 2024, was Mr. Vang interviewed as well?
Yes.
Initially, this call came in as a missing child, correct?
Yes.
The first law enforcement agency responding was Two Rivers Police Department, local agencies, correct?
Correct.
And do you recall who was speaking with Mr. Vang initially?
I don't recall which patrol officer initially, but I know at some point Lieutenant Glazer was also speaking with Jesse Vang.
And was Mr. Vang asked about victim child one?
Yes,
And did he provide any information on whether victim child one was staying with him?
yes he did.
What kind of information did he provide?
He indicated that victim child one had been staying with him, and Vang referred to it as babysitting him. He confirmed that he was in a relationship with Katrina Bauer, and that victim child one had been staying with him as punishment for his bad behaviors back home.
Punishments with his behaviors with Ms. Bauer?
Correct.
Did he indicate specifically what kind of punishments were used?
Yes.
And what kind of punishments were used?
So throughout the course of the contacts with the police officers, he had initially indicated that he was using timeouts with victim child one and then withholding things from him, such as milk, food, ice cream. That then later transitioned into that learning that victim child one was afraid of cold water, and that Vang would threaten the use of cold water on victim child one for punishment. In addition to that, Vang also indicated that he used standing and praying as a primary form of punishment with victim child one. He further described that standing and praying would primarily be victim child one standing in the corner of Vang's bedroom, facing the corner, by himself, with his hands folded in front of him, palms facing together, and praying for an extended period of time, as well as standing for extended periods of time. Additionally, he indicated that during this last stay, since February 12th, at the time until February 20th, 2024, victim child one was not allowed to have access or play with any toys. In addition, Vang also indicated that he did not allow victim child one to have any contact with his mother, with the thought that of depriving the child of things would make him more appreciative of those things later on.
I'm going to go back to the standing and praying that you described. You indicated that some of that was for extended periods of time, correct?
Yes.
Did he give a time frame?
At certain points during the conversation, he said that he would make him stand for an hour. Other times he mentioned that he would stand for 2 to 3 hours at a time.
As part of this investigation, did law enforcement review cell phone information from Katrina Bauer as well as Jesse Vang and some of the children's cell phones?
Yes.
Did you review some of that data from Katrina Bauer as well as Jesse Vang and some of the other children's cell phones?
I did.
When Katrina Bauer and Jesse Vang were interviewed, did law enforcement try and determine a timeline as far as when Katrina was in Two Rivers and when she was in the Wisconsin Dells?
Yes.
And one of those time periods involved February 14th of 2024, correct?
Yes.
Was there a point in time where Ms. Bauer admitted to being in Two Rivers on February 14th?
Initially, she had denied being in Two Rivers, however, later acknowledged that she was in Two Rivers on the early morning hours of February 14th, 2024.
And When there was a review of the cell phone, were there any photographs that would substantiate her being in Two Rivers on that date?
I
Yes, sir.
object to the question, there's no foundation as to whose cell phone.
I'll rephrase. When Katrina Bauer's cell phone was reviewed, were there any photographs from that February 14th timeframe of 2024?
Yes, there was.
And did you review that photograph?
Yes, I did.
And was that a photograph of victim child one?
Yes, it was.
Your Honor, I ask permission to approach.
Okay.
That's exhibit 2.
Yes. Showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 2. Do you recognize that?
I do.
And what is Exhibit 2?
Exhibit 2 is a copy of a deleted photo that was found in Katrina Bauer's cell phone. The video shows victim child 1 that appears to be laying on the couch or the futon. He's not wearing a t-shirt. He's partially covered up in a red, black, and white fuzzy blanket. Of note is there's a black blindfold over his eyes. And also of note is there appears to be marks or bruises along the side of his neck and near the elbow of his arm.
And does that fairly and accurately the Exhibit 2 that you have in front of you is a copy, obviously, fairly and accurately represent that photograph?
Yes.
And move Exhibit 2 into evidence.
There's no foundation as to when the photograph was taken, and without that, it's not relevant.
Attorney Wbay?
I believe he testified that there was a photograph located from February 14th, but I can ask a follow-up. When the Katrina Bauer cell phone was reviewed, did it indicate, during that review, are you able to see a date or any time marking of when that photograph would have been taken?
Yes, the metadata show that.
And what date would that photograph have been taken?
February 14th, 2024 at 3:13 a.m.
I move Exhibit 2 into evidence.
Any objection, Attorney Jensen?
No.
Jensen? All right, the court will receive that exhibit and on its own motion seal that document for use by the attorneys only.
Thank you. Special Agent Volan, as part of your work on this case, you indicated you reviewed some cell phone information. Were Katrina Bauer and Jesse Vang communicating in other means besides talking on the phone?
They're also text messaging on their phones and also using Facebook Messenger.
Did you review, or strike that, were the Facebook messages between Katrina Bauer and Jesse Vang obtained by law enforcement?
Yes.
Was one of your tasks in this case to review Facebook messaging between Katrina Bauer and Jesse Vang?
Yes, it was.
And I'm looking in the time period between January 1st of 2024 through that February 20th, 2024 timeframe, okay?
Yes.
Roughly, approximately, how many Facebook messages were going back and forth between Katrina Bauer and Jesse Vang?
I'll just clarify the records that we requested started December 1st of 2023 through February 20th. And during that time frame, approximately 2.5 months, there's well over 15,000 Facebook text messages alone between them.
And your job was to review some of those, correct?
Correct.
And some of them were messaging as far as typing out words. Other times there were pictures and videos, correct?
Yes.
And if there were pictures and videos in these messaging, when you did your review, did you look at those pictures and videos as well?
I did.
Okay. And as far as between that January 1st, 2024 timeframe and February 20th, 2024, was there messaging between Katrina Bauer and Jesse Vang regarding victim child 1 staying at Jesse Vang's residence at various times through that 2-month time period?
Yes, there was.
And was that also supported by videos and photographs?
Yes, it was.
Are you familiar with Mr. Vang's apartment?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so when you were looking at certain photographs, were you able to identify whether victim child 1 was in that apartment or a different location?
For the most part, yes.
In your review of those messagings between January of 2024 and February of 2024, were there conversations about discipline involving victim child 1?
Discipline, like I mentioned before, was standing for extended periods of time, standing and praying in the corner, making him repeat phrases such as "good boy," "sorry mom," over and over several times. There was also some mention of sleep deprivation.
Was cold water mentioned as well?
Yes.
And as far as the standing and praying for periods of time, was that a one-time thing or was it more than once?
More than once.
When you were reviewing these videos, you indicated that there were times that victim child 1 was saying some phrases. And what were those? What was the typical phrase that he would be asked to say to Katrina Bauer?
Sometimes a lot of the phrases were prompted by Jesse Vang, so he would prompt victim child 1 what to say, such as "sorry mommy," "good boy," "no more," "I don't want to live at Uncle's house anymore," things like that.
When he said he didn't want to live at Uncle's house anymore, was that ever clarified as far as who Uncle was?
Yes, early on in the investigation, the initial responding officers had clarified that with Jesse Vang, because he initially referred to victim child 1 as his nephew, but then clarified that he's not related via family to the victim child. That's just what he was referred to as.
I'm going to get into some more specifics regarding these Facebook messages, okay, and some of the videos. Specifically, did you review some videos from January 22nd, 2024?
I did.
And just to direct your attention, the first video I'm going to ask you about is at approximately 18:56 hours, okay? Was there a video during that time period that you reviewed as far as victim child 1 standing by a door in Jesse Vang's bedroom? Refresh your memory?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd ask permission for him to review page 8 of the criminal complaint. Does that refresh your memory?
Yes.
And what did that video depict?
It was a 9-second video of showing Elijah standing by the door of the apartment. And as it was believed to be Jesse Bang had approached him, victim child 1 seemed to cower and quickly sit down by the door and say, "Don't hit me."
Did he make any references about being a good boy or anything along those lines?
No.
Okay. And shortly, or straight that, also on January 22nd, 2024, was at approximately 22:11, was there some conversation regarding a boot camp?
Yes.
And do you recall what that conversation was?
I'd have to refer to the criminal complaint to refresh my memory.
Your Honor, I'd ask that the officer be allowed to review the bottom of page 8.
You may go ahead and review page 8.
Does that refresh your memory?
Yes.
And what was the message around 22:11?
The message was sent by Jesse Bang indicating that victim child 1 was in boot camp, and he hates the fact that victim child 1 is a faker and a crier, and he hates the fact that when Jesse walks into the room, victim child 1 says out, and don't hurt me.
Okay. Later that evening, on January 22nd, 2024, at approximately 23 hours and 7 minutes, did Mr. Vang message about a punishment that was imposed to victim child 1?
Again, I'd have to refer to the criminal complaint to refresh my memory.
Your Honor, I'd ask that the officer be allowed to review page 9.
You can review page 9.
Which one specifically are we referring to?
January 22nd, 2024, at 23 hours, 7 minutes.
Okay.
What was in that message?
It was a message sent by Jesse saying that this was his punishment from faking earlier, then followed up with a video showing victim child 1 repeating the phrase, "Good boy, good boy, good boy, good boy," 10 times over. Vang makes the comment that no more seeing him. He had been, this was his punishment from 3 hours earlier.
There are several messages after that talking about this punishment, correct?
Yes.
And some videos that go along with that, correct?
Yes.
And we're talking shortly before midnight on January 22nd, going into the early morning hours of January 23rd of 2024, correct?
Yes.
Do these videos depict victim child 1 as far as his physical appearance and what he was physically doing? Some of them.
Yes.
And do you recall what kind of victim child 1's appearance or physical actions Later that day, on January 23rd, 2024, at approximately 15 hours and 10 minutes, another video sent to Ms. Bauer by Mr. Vang.
Your Honor, at this point I object on the grounds of relevance. And when this line of questioning first started, I thought it was leading somewhere, but it's over.
Date, and he's charged with chronic child abuse. This shows the pattern of activity as far as the punishments that were imposed, the types of punishments that were used throughout this time period with Mr. Vang that did lead up to his death.
The objection is noted. I'll allow the question.
Do you recall a video with Mr. Vang's hand on victim child's one?
Repeat some phrases, and at the same time, while Mr. Vang's hand was on victim child one neck and shoulder area, and appeared to be like he was squeezing it. And you could tell that victim child one appeared to be wincing as a result from it.
There were additional messaging through January 24th of 2024 as well, correct?
Correct.
And some of those were discussing, again, sleep deprivation and timeouts that were being used.
Correct.
When you reviewed these photographs and messaging, did you find any photographs or videos that were consistent with that praying position that Mr. Vang had described?
Yes.
Okay. And just my last question regarding these January Facebook messages. On January 31st of 2024, was there any reference by Mr. Vang in a message at approximately 16:35 regarding a baby prison?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall approximately what he messaged about a baby prison?
I believe he messaged, he's in baby prison, RN, suggesting right now.
During the course of your investigation, as part of the investigation, does law enforcement try to determine whereabouts of Mr. Vang during that week of February 12th through February 20th of 2024?
Yes.
And you can do that by different means, correct?
Correct.
Some of that is by cell phone data, some of that is by video evidence, those types of things, correct?
Correct.
And specifically, did law enforcement try and create a, for lack of a better term, a timeline of what was going on during that time period?
Yes.
I'm going to talk specifically about Friday, February 16th of 2024. And that evening, victim child one was still in Mr. Vang's care, as far as you knew.
Correct.
Okay. And in fact, there was some video evidence from an automobile place where victim child one was seen with Mr. Vang, correct?
On the evening of February 16th, correct.
Okay. After that, was law enforcement able to develop some information as far as Mr. Bang's whereabouts that evening of the 16th after he was at Ross Auto with victim child 1?
Yes.
And what type of evidence was law enforcement able to utilize to put together that time period of where he was that evening?
I object on the grounds there's no foundation as to the source of this information.
Trying to agree.
I'll rephrase the question, but that's what I'm asking for. What sources of evidence were they able to develop?
You can answer the question.
So we had accumulated text messages, cell tower information from phone companies, information from phone extractions, and video surveillance from multiple different places or businesses.
On the evening of February 16th of return back to the Two Rivers area.
Yes, she did.
And I'm going to talk as far as cell phone data information. Were you able to see where Mr. Bangs and Ms. Bowers' cell phones were traveling that evening?
Yes.
And was there a point in time when Mr. Bang left the Two Rivers area?
Yes.
And where did he travel to? Or where did the cell phone travel to?
We believe both Katrina and Jesse's phone traveled together to the city of Manitowoc. It appears that Jesse Bang got dropped off at Saucy's Bar while Katrina Bauer continued to the Quick Trip.
Did law enforcement follow up with Saucy's Bar to see if Jesse Bang had stopped at that establishment?
Yes.
And were they able to confirm whether he had stopped there?
Yes.
Did Ms. Bauer, while Mr. Bang's cell phone was at Saucy's Bar, did she travel to another location?
Yes, she traveled to the Quick Trip in Manitowoc.
Was law enforcement able to obtain surveillance video from that quick trip?
Yes.
And was Ms. Bauer on any of that surveillance video?
Yes, she was.
Was victim child 1 seen on that surveillance video?
Victim child 1 was not seen with Katrina Bauer.
And in fact, some of that surveillance video was inside the quick trip as well as exterior, correct?
That's correct.
And did that exterior surveillance video show her car?
Yes, it did.
Or the car she was using, I'm sorry.
The car was owned by Jesse Bang. It was a white Honda, and she was driving it at the time.
And victim child 1 was not in the vehicle?
Correct.
And was, to the best of your knowledge, victim child 1 ever seen at Saucy's Bar?
We had no information that victim child 1 was at Saucy's Bar.
Did law enforcement try and determine if anyone was supervising, babysitting, or caring for victim child 1 that evening of February 16th, 2024?
We could not locate anybody that would have been caring for victim child 1 except for Jesse Bang and Katrina Bauer.
Katrina Bauer then left Two Rivers the early morning. She left Two Rivers on February 17th. Did messaging Katrina Bauer and Mr. Bang continue?
Yes.
And on February 18th of 2024, at approximately 4:36 a.m., was there a discussion about victim child 1 and his opinion
The summary was that Vang messaged that I told you to trust me, that Vang said that that he wanted child one to fear him, or that there was an inclination of fear, and that Katrina Bauer responded that she didn't want him to fear Vang. However, Vang replied back is, now he's going to respect me.
As part of this investigation, were some experts utilized to review evidence?
Yes,
And was one of those experts that was utilized a Dr. Hillary Petska from Children's Hospital of Wisconsin?
yes,
And are you aware of kind of what her specialty is?
yeah, she's a pediatrician at a children's hospital.
And does she have a specialty within pediatrics that she also has?
I believe it's child abuse and neglect.
Okay. Did the investigative team provide her some information to review?
Yes,
What type of, not the whole list, but kind of a general idea, what type of information was provided to her for review?
I believe we provided her prior medical records, social services reports, contents of the messages exchanged between Katrina Bauer and Jesse Vang, the pictures, the photographs associated with those messages, and records like that.
Did she provide the investigative team a report and some conclusions?
Yes, she did.
And did you review what her conclusion was?
I did.
And do you recall what her conclusion was?
I grounds that there's not a foundation as to what information the expert reviewed, and any expert opinion, there has to be helpful to the finder of fact, in this case the court, and there's nothing that in this record so far in terms of foundation that it would be in any way helpful, so I object.
Well, there was testimony that she reviewed prior medical records, pictures, photos, messages, among other documents provided. Attorney LaBrie?
Yes.
Well, that explains the media or the medium on which she reviewed it, but doesn't explain what information was reviewed.
For the purposes of the preliminary hearing, I'll allow the question.
Was she specifically asked to review the care or the punishments that were used?
Yes,
And did she reach any conclusions or provide any information to the investigative team regarding the punishments?
she did provide a diagnosis, yes.
Okay. And do you recall what that diagnosis was?
I do recall, in order to be accurate, I have to refer to the criminal complaint of what her diagnosis was.
Your Honor, I'd ask permission for the officer to review page 16 of the criminal complaint.
You may.
Did you want me to read what her diagnosis was?
If the court would allow, it might expedite things.
What paragraph are we looking at?
55.
Attorney Jensen, any objection to
Yeah,
that?
I would object to reading that paragraph into the record, because as it's used in this situation, physical abuse has a legal definition, provided for by the statutes, And so to allow the state to introduce evidence that this doctor supposedly made a diagnosis, and I'm using air quotes on the diagnosis because a diagnosis is a medical conclusion, not a legal conclusion. So the fact that she made a medical diagnosis of physical abuse, psychological, emotional maltreatment, and neglect is not relevant to whether that behavior meets the legal definition provided by the statute. So I object.
Attorney Wbay.
Your Honor, Dr. Petska is a pediatrician with Children's Hospital. She's a child abuse specialist. I understand that the diagnosis phrasing is usually used in medical terminology, but she is providing information here about these types of physical acts that were required to be done by victim child 1 and how that affected him and what that would have done to him, which I think is absolutely relevant as far as...
My heart is full today. My heart is full today, full of gratitude for the trust you have placed in me, full of love for our country, and full of resolve. The outcome of this election is not what we wanted, not what we fought for, not what we voted for, but hear me when I say, the light of America's promise will always burn bright. As long as we never give up and as long as we keep fighting. To my beloved Doug and our family, I love you so very much. To President Biden and Dr. Biden, thank you for your faith and support. To Governor Walz and the Walz family, I know your service to our nation will continue. And to my extraordinary team, to the volunteers who gave so much of themselves, to the poll workers and the local election officials, I thank you all. Look, I am so proud of the race we ran and the way we ran it. Over the 107 days of this campaign, we have been intentional about building community and building coalitions, bringing